Have you noticed that the world feels different lately? That things are changing faster than ever before? You're not imagining it. From unprecedented climate events to technological breakthroughs that seemed impossible just years ago, from social upheaval to economic instability, the signs are all around us. Today, we're going to explore the signs of the end that are already happening right now in our world. Whether you view these through a religious lens, a scientific perspective, or simply as a concerned citizen of Earth, the patterns we're seeing are undeniable. Some call them prophecies being fulfilled. Others call them the consequences of human action. But everyone agrees something significant is unfolding. So settle in, because what you're about to hear might change how you see the world around you. These aren't predictions about a distant future. These are realities of our present moment. Let's start with the most visible sign, our changing climate. And before anyone dismisses this as just another weather cycle, let's look at the facts. In the past decade alone, we've witnessed record-breaking heat waves on every continent. Cities that never saw extreme temperatures are now experiencing deadly heat. The summer of 2023 was officially recorded as the hottest in human history. And then 2024 broke that record. We're not talking about gradual warming anymore. We're talking about a climate in crisis. But it's not just heat. We're seeing weather extremes of all kinds, unprecedented flooding in areas that rarely saw rain, mega droughts lasting years in regions that were once fertile, hurricanes and typhoons of increasing intensity, wildfires so massive they create their own weather systems. Ancient glaciers that have existed for thousands of years are disappearing within our lifetime. The Arctic ice is melting at rates that shocked even the most pessimistic scientists. Sea levels are rising, and coastal cities are already planning their retreat from the ocean. And here's what makes this truly a sign of the end times: the speed. Climate scientists didn't predict things would happen this fast. We've compressed what should have been centuries of change into just decades. The Earth itself is giving us a warning, and that warning is getting louder every single year. Now let's talk about something that touches every single one of us: diseases and pandemics. If COVID-19 taught us anything, it's that our modern connected world is incredibly vulnerable to biological threats. But COVID wasn't an isolated incident. It was a wake-up call. Since the year 2000, we've seen SARS, MERS, Ebola outbreaks, Zika virus, and multiple influenza strains that threaten to become pandemics. The World Health Organization's list of emerging infectious diseases grows longer every year. Scientists warn us that we're entering an age of pandemics. Climate change is pushing animals into new territories, bringing them into closer contact with humans. Deforestation is destroying natural barriers that once kept dangerous pathogens isolated. Our global travel network means a virus can circle the planet in hours, not months. And there's something else: antibiotic resistance. We're running out of medicines that work. Superbugs are emerging that can resist every drug we throw at them. Infections that were once easily treatable are becoming death sentences again, just like in the pre-antibiotic era. The biblical plagues might have seemed like ancient history, but we're living through our own version. The difference is, we created the perfect conditions for them ourselves. Let's shift to something that defines our current era: technology and artificial intelligence. We're living through a revolution that's happening so fast, most people can't keep up. Just a few years ago, artificial intelligence was something from science fiction. Today, AI can write, create art, diagnose diseases, drive cars, and even make decisions about human lives. We've created intelligence that in some ways surpasses our own. But here's where it gets concerning. We're racing ahead with this technology without fully understanding where it's taking us. AI systems are making decisions we can't explain. They're controlling critical infrastructure, financial systems, and military applications. We're building something incredibly powerful, and we're not entirely sure we can control it. Tech leaders themselves, the very people creating these systems, are sounding alarms. They're warning that we might be approaching a point of no return, where AI becomes so advanced that humanity loses its position as the dominant intelligence on Earth. Add to this the rise of surveillance technology, facial recognition everywhere, data collection on an unprecedented scale, the ability to track, monitor and control populations in ways that would have made Orwell's nightmares look quaint. We're creating tools of incredible power, and those tools are reshaping what it means to be human. The question isn't whether we can do these things. The question is whether we should. And we're not stopping to ask. Now let's talk about something that affects billions of people: economic instability and the growing gap between rich and poor. The wealth inequality in our world has reached levels not seen since before the Great Depression. The richest 1% now own more wealth than the entire middle class combined. In the United States, 3 individuals have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the entire population. But it's not just about numbers. It's about what this means for society. Young people today are the first generation in modern history expected to be poorer than their parents. The dream of owning a home, having job security, or retiring comfortably is becoming just that, a dream. Meanwhile, our economic systems are showing cracks. Stock markets swing wildly on single tweets. Cryptocurrencies rise and crash, wiping out fortunes overnight. Supply chains that seemed solid break at the first sign of stress. Banks that were considered too big to fail suddenly need government bailouts. Inflation is eating away at wages. The cost of basic necessities, food, housing, healthcare, is rising faster than incomes. More and more people are working multiple jobs just to survive. The middle class, the foundation of stable societies, is being hollowed out. And here's the terrifying part. When economic systems fail, when people lose hope of a better future, that's when societies collapse. History shows us this pattern again and again. Economic desperation leads to social unrest, which leads to the breakdown of order. The signs are already here. Speaking of social unrest, let's examine the deep divisions tearing our societies apart. We're living in an age of unprecedented polarization. Turn on the news in any country, and you'll see the same story. Societies splitting along political, religious, and ideological lines. People aren't just disagreeing anymore. They're living in completely different realities, consuming completely different information, and viewing their opponents not as fellow citizens with different ideas, but as enemies who must be defeated. Social media, which promised to connect us, has instead created echo chambers where people only hear what they already believe. Algorithms feed us content that makes us angry because angry people click more, share more, engage more. We're being deliberately divided because division is profitable. The result? Trust in institutions is collapsing. People don't trust their governments, their media, their scientists, or even their neighbors. Without shared truth, without shared values, without trust, how does a society function? We're seeing the rise of extremism on all sides. Political violence is becoming normalized again. In countries that prided themselves on peaceful democratic transitions, we're now seeing armed groups at polling places, attempted coups, and political assassinations making headlines. The center is not holding. The reasonable middle ground where compromise happens is disappearing. And when societies become this polarized, when every issue becomes an existential battle, that's when things fall apart. Let's turn our attention to something that's been part of human history for millennia, but is reaching new levels of intensity: wars and rumors of wars. Right now, as you're watching this, there are dozens of armed conflicts happening around the world. But it's not just the number of conflicts, it's their nature that should concern us. Major powers are in direct confrontation again in ways we haven't seen since the Cold War. Nuclear weapons are being openly discussed as options. China and the United States are locked in an increasingly tense struggle for global dominance. Russia's actions in Ukraine have shattered the post-World War II order. The Middle East remains a powder keg that could explode at any moment. But modern warfare looks different. We are seeing cyber attacks that can shut down entire countries' infrastructure, drone swarms that can overwhelm traditional defenses, autonomous weapons that make kill decisions without human input. The next major war might not start with missiles. It might start with the lights going out. And there's something even more troubling. The treaties and international institutions that prevented global war for 70 years are crumbling. Countries are withdrawing from nuclear agreements. International law is being ignored. The United Nations seems powerless to prevent conflict. We're sleepwalking toward a confrontation that could dwarf anything in human history. And unlike previous generations, we now have weapons that could literally end civilization. The doomsday clock, maintained by scientists since 1947, is closer to midnight than it's ever been, even during the height of the Cold War. Now let's discuss something that might surprise you: the loss of knowledge and the rise of misinformation. We live in the information age, with more data at our fingertips than any previous generation. Yet somehow, we're becoming less informed, not more. Misinformation spreads faster than truth. A lie can circle the globe before the truth gets its shoes on, as the saying goes, and it's not just harmless mistakes. We're seeing deliberate campaigns to confuse, to divide, to make people doubt reality itself. People are rejecting expert knowledge in favor of conspiracy theories. Science is treated as just another opinion. Documented facts are dismissed as fake news. We can't even agree on basic reality anymore. This isn't just frustrating, it's dangerous. When people can't distinguish truth from fiction, they make bad decisions. They elect bad leaders. They support harmful policies. They hurt themselves and others. And there's something even more concerning happening. We're losing our collective memory. Digital archives are fragile. Websites disappear. Information gets buried under mountains of garbage content. Future generations might have less access to accurate information about our time than we have about the ancient world. The ancient library of Alexandria burned, and humanity lost countless works of knowledge. We might be creating our own digital Alexandria, and we might be watching it burn in slow motion, not through fire, but through noise, through too much information, most of it worthless or false. Let's talk about something often overlooked: the collapse of nature and the sixth mass extinction. While we've been focused on human affairs, the natural world has been sending us desperate signals. Scientists estimate we're losing species at a rate 1,000 times faster than the natural background rate. That's not an exaggeration. In our lifetime, we might see the extinction of half of all species on Earth. Let that sink in. Half. Insect populations have crashed by 75% in some regions. If you're old enough, you remember when your car windshield would be covered with bugs after a drive. When was the last time you saw that? The insects are disappearing, and insects are the foundation of most ecosystems. Fish populations in our oceans have declined by 50% since 1970. Coral reefs, the rainforests of the sea, are dying. The Amazon rainforest, the lungs of our planet, is approaching a tipping point where it might transform into savanna. We're not just losing individual species, we're losing entire ecosystems. And here's why this matters. We depend on these systems. They produce our oxygen, clean our water, pollinate our crops, and maintain the climate. When they collapse, we collapse. This isn't about saving cute animals, though that's important too. This is about the life support system of our planet failing. And it's happening right now while we're distracted by our phones and our politics. Now let's examine something that might make you uncomfortable: moral and spiritual decline. Regardless of your religious beliefs, there's no denying that something has changed in our collective values. Traditional institutions that once provided moral guidance, churches, community organizations, extended families, are weakening or disappearing. People are more isolated than ever, despite being more connected digitally. Loneliness has become an epidemic, especially among young people. We're seeing a rise in what many call nihilism, the belief that nothing really matters. Rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide are climbing, especially among young people. More people report feeling that life has no meaning or purpose. At the same time, we're seeing the rise of materialism and narcissism. Social media has created a culture of constant performance, where people's worth is measured in likes and followers. Everything is commodified. Everything is for sale. Nothing is sacred. Violence in entertainment has become so normalized that content that would have shocked previous generations barely raises an eyebrow. Empathy seems to be declining. People film tragedies instead of helping. Online harassment is routine. But perhaps most concerning is the loss of shared moral frameworks. We can't agree on what's right and wrong anymore. Every moral position is treated as relative, as just a matter of opinion. When there's no shared sense of right and wrong, when everyone does what's right in their own eyes, that's when societies lose their cohesion. This isn't about being religious or not. It's about the glue that holds communities together. And that glue is dissolving. Let's look at one more sign that's both fascinating and terrifying. The convergence of all these crises at once. That's what makes our time unique in history. Previous civilizations faced one or two major challenges, a plague, a war, an economic collapse. But they rarely faced everything at once. We do. We're dealing with climate change, pandemics, economic instability, social upheaval, potential war, technological disruption, and ecological collapse simultaneously. And here's the critical point. These crises aren't separate. They're interconnected. Climate change creates refugees, which creates social tension, which creates political instability. Economic inequality fuels social division, which makes it harder to address climate change. Technology amplifies misinformation, which makes every other problem harder to solve. We're not facing individual problems, we're facing a systems failure. The entire way we've organized our global civilization is reaching its limits. And when systems fail, they don't fail gradually. They fail suddenly. Think of it like stress fractures in a building. One fracture might be manageable, two might still be okay. But when you have stress fractures everywhere, when multiple critical systems are failing at once, that's when catastrophic collapse becomes not just possible, but likely. So what does all this mean? Are we really living in the end times? Here's the truth. Whether you interpret these signs through a religious lens or a purely secular one, the message is the same. Our current trajectory is unsustainable. Something has to change, and it will change either through our choice or through collapse. For those with religious faith, these signs might indeed indicate prophetic fulfillment. For those without, they represent the predictable consequences of human choices catching up with us. But both perspectives agree. We're at a critical turning point in human history. The question isn't really whether we're seeing signs of the end. The question is, the end of what? The end of life on Earth? Probably not. The Earth will survive. The end of humanity? Possible, but unlikely. The end of civilization as we know it, that's the real question. Throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen. The Mayans, the Romans, countless others. They thought their empires would last forever. They saw signs of trouble and ignored them. Until one day, everything changed. We're not helpless, though. We're not passive observers. Every one of these signs represents a choice we can make differently. We can address climate change. We can reduce inequality. We can choose truth over lies. We can reconnect with each other and with nature. We can use technology wisely instead of recklessly. But time is running out. These problems have been building for decades. The warning signs have been flashing, and we keep hitting the snooze button. The signs of the end aren't coming. They're already here. They're in the news every day. They're in the air we breathe and the water we drink. They're in our politics and our economics. They're in our hearts and our communities. The question is, now that we see them, what will we do about it? Will we wake up and make the hard choices necessary to change course? Or will we keep scrolling, keep consuming, keep pretending that everything will somehow work out? The end times aren't about a specific date on a calendar. They're about a culmination of choices, a convergence of consequences. And we're living through it right now. So look around you, pay attention. The signs are everywhere. And what you do with that knowledge, how you choose to live in light of these realities, might just determine whether this is truly the end or simply the end of one chapter before a new one begins. The choice, as it always has been, is ours. But the clock is ticking. Thank you for watching.